Hello everyone, welcome back to another video with On Point Politics, your number one stop for all things election analysis and polling in the United States. And today we're going to be looking at Trump's best case scenario in the Electoral College. Make sure to hit the like button and to subscribe if you want more content just like this. We are also being joined by Gold Crown Politics for this video, investigating what could be the best case scenario for Donald Trump. Gold Crown, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey guys, Gold Crown Politics here. I'm happy to be collaborating with On Point Politics for this video. Let's get into it.
So, pretty much for this best case scenario to happen for Donald Trump, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of context here. Me and Gold Crown Politics have essentially developed this average here, which basically adjusts all of the national polling data that RCP and 538 have, and we've picked point pollsters that we feel like have been around for a while or that are going to be fairly accurate, relatively within the range. Usually polls that are industry standard, including the SoCal Strategies poll, which is the poll we sponsor here at On Point Politics. And today, we are basically looking at this aggregator here, which is basically weighing all of the polling data to a tied electorate to eliminate as much polling bias as humanly possible. And we actually see that Donald Trump is up in the popular vote by around 2 points in this scenario. And what's quite funny is we've actually even tested this to the Trump v. Biden matchup right around Biden dropped when he dropped out of the race. And Biden was actually at 38.7%. And this is the same polls that are in the current average today. The same polls will tell you that Trump was going to beat Biden in the popular vote by a pretty decent amount. Trump was polling right above his 2016 vote share. Biden all the way down at around 38.7%, which is pretty fascinating because his approval rating was actually between 37 and 39%, approaching his dropout post Trump's assassination attempt. So it's very fascinating that Biden's vote share was pretty close to his job approval rating. I think that's a very fascinating telltale sign there that this probably would have been accurate. Kennedy was getting around 8% of the national popular vote, with about, Stein and West getting a little bit over 1% each, even West getting a decent amount, and undecideds were at about 4%. So Biden could have picked up some steam, but basically there was no path for Biden to win the White House, because even if Biden picked up all the undecideds, he would have not been able to beat Trump in the national popular vote. The best case scenario for Biden would have actually been about R+4, given the undecideds, which would have been really crazy. But we are looking at the best case scenario for Trump against Harris, which entails a couple things. And Gold Crown, I do have it on my screen here. Do you want to go ahead and talk about these things that would have to occur for the best case scenario to happen?
So, in a likely best case scenario for Donald Trump against Kamala Harris, he would be winning the popular vote by about 7 percentage points. As you see right there, Trump would be getting about 52% nationally, and Kamala Harris would be getting about 45.5%. And funny enough, Kamala Harris's her adjusted approval rating is just that, just about 45.6%. So that is kind of interesting that is kind of lining up. It is definitely a possibility that Trump could theoretically be leading by that much. But for this scenario to occur, there would have to be many things. Certainly, for this to happen, you look at that, a horrible debate performance. Kamala Harris, she has been avoiding debates for the most part, also on the campaign trail. She has been avoiding interviews as well. She certainly is not the best public speaker. And so, certainly in the upcoming debate between Trump and Harris on September 10th, if she does have a horrible debate performance, that would certainly hurt her a lot. We obviously saw what happened to Joe Biden when he had his poor debate performance against Trump. It literally forced him to drop out. And Kamala Harris, we could see a similar thing where, she loses perhaps a couple points nationally. The next thing, the revealing of extreme economic policy from the Harris campaign. We have certainly seen that, she's had to copy things like no tax on tips, that, that was Trump's policy, and she's been copying it. She hasn't really put forth a good policy plan that would win over moderates. She's really trying to appeal to her base, and that's not really going to work out. And so if she continues with this poor policy, we could certainly see her not do very well. In the next one, Trump has another lawfare attack. We could certainly see that as well. We obviously saw what happened in the polling data when Trump was prosecuted with his felony charges. He only went up in the polling data. So that could also, if it happens again, with the thing coming up in September, we could certainly see another boost for Trump. The next one, economy recession. That is definitely a possibility. If you look at the indicators, a recession is definitely possible. The unemployment rate has certainly been going up as of recently. That is certainly a possibility. And then, of course, the Kennedy endorsement of Trump maximizing his efficiency in terms of helping Trump. That definitely, we have seen some polls, now that Kennedy has dropped out, that could certainly boost him by about 1 to 2 points nationally. And so, if all these things kind of culminated, of course, it's unlikely for all of them to happen in the same scenario, but it is possible for this to happen, theoretically speaking. So if all these things happened, he would be leading by about 7 points in the national popular vote. Let's check that out and see what that would look like on the Electoral College map.
So, looking at these states right now, for the likely or at least the safe Republican states, we'd have Idaho, Utah, Wyoming, as well as Montana, both Dakotas, all of Nebraska, except the second congressional district, the state of Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Missouri, Kentucky, West Virginia, Indiana, as well as South Carolina, including Alaska, which were all about safe, except for Kansas, South Carolina, and Alaska. They were likely states in 2020, as well as Maine's second congressional district. But we do have a couple more safe states in the column, and I do want Gold Crown to touch on these as to why these would be the proper categorizations for these states. So starting off with Iowa, Ohio, and then doing Texas and Florida.
So Iowa and Ohio would certainly both be in the safe Republican column in a +7 Trump national environment. He would certainly be winning both of those states by over 15 percentage points. And the same thing could certainly be said for both the states of Texas and Florida. It would be a huge shift. Trump +7, that would be about an 11 to 12 point shift nationally from 2020. And so even if, states like Iowa and Ohio, for example, even if they trended to the left, it would be such a huge national shift that Trump would be winning them in the safe Republican column for the first time of his political career.
And looking at the safe Democrat states, what's very fascinating is that I think in a best case scenario for Donald Trump, he's probably winning Hispanics outright by about 10 points. He's winning white voters by about 20 points. He's more than likely getting 30% of the African American vote in a best case scenario, and is probably winning Asians by 10 to 15 points as well, which could really spell some, crazy looking results. And so, because of that, the only safe Democrat states on the map would probably be Vermont, Maryland, DC, and as well as Massachusetts and Maryland, excuse me. Those would be the four safe Democrat states on the map for this video. If Trump is really maximizing his support with all demographic groups, Vermont, Massachusetts, as well as Maryland and DC would be in the safe Democrat column because they have historically been some of the bluer states, voting to the left of the nation by over 25 points each. And so, even in a scenario where Trump is winning the popular vote by 7, a state like Maryland could potentially be under 15 if, Harris just does really bad with African American voters. But even in this scenario, we'd probably still have it in the safe column for Kamala Harris. And that is essentially it. Only 27 safe electoral votes for Harris. And I'm going to go ahead and let Gold Crown take it away with the likely Republican states, and I'll do the likely Democrat states.
So the first likely Republican state on this map would be the state of Nevada. This one would be about a 10 percentage point win, give or take, depending on how well Trump improves with Hispanics. Of course, we've already seen signs that he is improving with this voting bloc. Of course, they're very prevalent in Nevada. If you look at Arizona, this would also be in the likely Republican column, perhaps about a 9 to 10 point win. And would be voting very similarly to Nevada in this forecast. And it is also a border state as well, so that could also push it to the right. You look at the state of Georgia, that also would be in the likely Republican column, perhaps a similar margin to Arizona at around 9 to 10 points. Of course, in a scenario like this, Trump would absolutely win upwards of 20, maybe even 25% of African Americans in this scenario. And so he would absolutely be dominating a black heavy state like Georgia, also in North Carolina as well. This would be probably around a 13-point victory, given that the state typically votes about 6 points to the right of the nation. And so in a Trump plus 7 national environment, that would get that margin for that state. And then you look up there to the Rust Belt, the state of Wisconsin, that one would probably be at around a 10, perhaps a 9 to 10 point victory. The state has been trending to the right. It typically votes about 4 points to the right of the nation, give or take. Michigan, that would be a little less favorable to Trump, but it would be certainly in the likely Republican column as well, perhaps as at a 7 to 8 point victory. And then you look at Pennsylvania, that one would be also at about 9 points for Donald Trump. He would definitely max out with the white working class. The rural counties would be incredibly red in all of these states. He would definitely, those counties would absolutely be incredibly red. And he would, of course, you would see a lot of reversion in the urban counties as well. And so that finishes out the likely Republican states.
For the likely Democrat states, the state of California, this is a very interesting one because Kamala Harris ran for attorney general in the state of California. But what's pretty fascinating is she narrowly won this race against a Republican in 2010 just because of third party candidates siphoning away Republican votes. And so if it wasn't for that, she would have lost that race by, mid single digit margins, which for a Democrat in the state of California on a statewide race like that, that is a horrible performance for a Democrat. And she's never won the Hispanic vote in the state of California for any of her elections. Pretty fun fact about her, actually. Washington and Oregon would also be in the likely Democrat column at around, 5 to 8 point victories for Kamala Harris in this scenario, as well as Colorado. Those Denver suburbs are really trending to the left right now. And even in this scenario, I cannot see her winning this state, or at least not losing the state by, at all, or really even winning it by even under 5 points. So I'd say +5 for Harris is the best case scenario for Donald Trump right now. And looking at, Connecticut and Rhode Island, those would be the likely Democrat states as well, including Maine's first congressional district. These states are deep blue, but are getting closer in the scenario of Trump +7. And now I'm going to give it over to Gold Crown to do the lean Democrat states.
So the lean Democratic states, we'll start out with the state of New York with its 28 electoral votes. It would be lean Democrat. I definitely think that in a best case scenario for Donald Trump, he would absolutely do very well with black voters as well as Hispanic voters. Of course, this state is heavier with minority voters. It's lower in white voters. And so this state, you could argue it's certainly favorable to Donald Trump compared to wider states. And certainly, Kamala Harris, she could absolutely screw her chances, to win this state by a large margin because this state does have a high percentage of Jewish voters and Arab voters as well. These groups, if she says a bad comment over Palestine, Israel and Palestine, that conflict, she could absolutely lose both of those groups, even though she's trying to hold on to both of them. And you look at the state of New Jersey, that would also be probably in the tilt Democratic column, actually. In that state, it's pretty similar. You have a lot of Jewish voters. And so if she doesn't show for full support of Israel or full support of Palestine, she could end up, kind of performing badly with both of those groups that are heavy in both of those states. Trump would also probably show big signs of improvement with union voters. You have a lot of union voters in both New York and New Jersey. Now you look down there to the state of Hawaii. This state would be in the lean Democratic column. I definitely think that the Hawaii fires in 2023, Joe Biden, he made a big mistake with that. Will those voters, will they blame Harris for that? Probably not as much, but they could still see her as a part of the problem in terms of that administration and how they handled that situation very poorly. Trump would also do very well with Asian voters as well in the state. You did see back in 2004 that Bush, he did get within 10 points in the state. So, in a landslide scenario for Trump, definitely lean Democrat is a possibility. That definitely is possible. And then you look to the last lean Democratic state, the state of Illinois. This state would be in the lean Democratic column. Donald Trump, he would do very well with African Americans in the state, especially in the Chicago suburban area, in that metropolitan area. He would do very well with the white working class in the rural areas. And those counties would be very, very deep red in a landslide scenario like this. And now I will kick it back to On Point.
Now, looking at the rest of these states, Delaware would be in the lean Democrat column as well. Joe Biden did kind of inflate Democrat support in the state, but I do think it would be in the lean column for Harris, considering that if Trump is winning the popular vote with whites by over 20 points, this state would definitely become a little bit more competitive than people are expecting it to. Looking at a state like New Mexico, this is a state with a very high Hispanic population, and our moving average actually has the race basically within a single point, with Harris leading the average very narrowly by about 0.7%. And so in a best case scenario, I could see Donald Trump winning the state by 3 to 4 points, because right now our average, has Trump up by 2.4% in the popular vote, and he's tied in the New Mexico average. So if he's winning by close to seven, a 3 to 4 point victory is definitely within the cards there. And even Virginia right now, I mean, that state could be a 3 to 4 point victory in a best case scenario, because even right now, with an R+2.5 national popular vote in my average, Harris is only up in Virginia in the average by 0.5%. And they're both polling in the mid 40s. So that is also pretty fascinating to see there as well. And looking at a state like Nebraska, second probably goes lean Republican in a best case scenario for the former president. This district has been trending to the left, but was redrawn to be more Republican friendly, and so those two may cancel each other out and basically make the district stagnant for now, and kind of vote similarly to how it did relative to the nation in 2020, and probably be lean Republican right now. Looking at New Hampshire and Maine at large, these two states are sort of very anti-incumbent. Maine at large is very pro-gun, kind of has its own independent mind from the rest of the country, and New Hampshire is very anti-incumbent. So these two states, in a best case scenario for Trump, I could see about 2 to 4 point victories for Trump. I think Trump has a higher ceiling in these states against Kamala Harris, mainly because of how far left she is. However, a state like Minnesota, I'd say even in a best case scenario for Donald Trump, may potentially be a very hard pick for him to get. The Walls pick may definitely help Harris out in some of the Hennepin County and suburban areas by about a few points here or there. And with Harris, she herself may actually appeal to a state like Minnesota a little bit more. Maybe it's lean Republican in a best case scenario. It's possible it's maybe over a point, but right now, even in an R+2.5 national environment, my moving average in the state of Minnesota, when you weigh all the party ID properly, Harris is still up in the state by 4.8 percentage points. And so even if Trump is winning the popular vote by around 7 or so, it may be a very hard flip for the state of Minnesota, even in a best case scenario for the former president. And so we end off this video with 347 electoral votes to Harris's 191 in the best case scenario for Donald Trump in the 2024 presidential election. Make sure to hit the like button and to subscribe if you want more content just like this. And make sure to go ahead and check out this, because we are having a collaboration with Rasmussen Reports sometime this week. It could be as early as tomorrow. So make sure to go ahead and stay tuned for that. If it's tomorrow, it'll probably air later that day. And any the closing thoughts, Gold Crown Politics?
Well, I do appreciate the collaboration video on point for Trump's best case scenario. Do check me out, guys. If you have never heard of me, Gold Crown Politics on YouTube, I do election forecasts and predictions. And once again, thanks On Point for the collaboration.
Of course, and make sure to go ahead, guys, and subscribe to Gold Crown Politics. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe if you want more content just like this. We are open to doing a best case scenario for Kamala Harris, just to show that we are objective and that we are trying to be the most accurate forecasters out here for this election cycle going forward. And so we will see you guys in the next video.